Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief. A stick inside their skull.
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 65. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics.
Hi, I'm George Takei. You know me as Helmsman Sulu on Star Trek. When I'm not busy going Warp Factor 8, I like to beam down to Lee's Comics and spend a lazy afternoon reading comics classics from Marvel to DC, from Dark Horse to Fantagraphics, and everything in between. So please, spend some time here at Lee's Comics and spend your hard-earned cash.
The Fun Ideas Podcast is made possible by listeners like you and from Lee's Comics of California, selling you what your mother threw out since 1982, online at leescomics.com. Headquartered, the timeline of the Monkey's solo years is out. Get it in paperback or hardback, and soon as an ebook on bearmanormedia.com or at Amazon. My co-author, Michael A. Ventrella, will be attending Beetlefest and selling and signing copies of it and our previous Monkey book there. He will be attending at the end of March. I'm doing the final edits for the TTV scrapbook, and I will be turning it in soon. I just got the assignment to do articles for Back Issue Magazine on Hee Haw and on Sid and Marty Krofft. The Warren Kremer book proof is back, and now we're doing final edits. I'm still working on my own Light Up Your Life travel agency, and of course the Mad book, and a possible new Disney book. Today's guest is a singer with 4 albums to his credit, but more importantly, he opened and has run his own comic book store since 1976. Here he is, Joe Ferrara. So on the phone today, I have Joe Ferrara. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, Mark. How are you today?
I am doing well, too. And as I usually start out, I always ask the question, tell me a little bit about yourself, and in your case, how you got into both running a long and admired and legendary comic book store, and also your singing and music career, that that both go in tandem on and on.
Well, the store wasn't a plan. I born and raised in San Jose, went to college there at San Jose State and Santa Clara, back and forth, but the bottom line is, while I was at Santa Clara, I was collecting comics. I loved comics. From 71 to 76, I collected comics. But what got me going again was in 70, I spent the year in the service. Then I came back, and my roommate for that summer was Mike Friedrich, who wrote many fine comics. Started Star Reach Productions, the first company to really represent artists and writers. Mike had a wonderful career. He was the first person at Marvel hired before Carol Kalish to be their liaison to the retail community. He was the first official representative from the publishers. Now, there's a jillion of them. Mike was the first one. So Mike was at the time writing a backup story in Detective. Robin was in college, and Mike was writing that backup story. He went on to write many other things for DC and Marvel, and created some great characters. So, and Mike received the Bill Finger Award this last year at San Diego Con, so I was real happy for him.
Cool.
But that got my interest in comics. I mean, what it did was it got me collecting. And so for the next 5 years, from 71 to 76, I collected, and then moved to Santa Cruz because that was where my first wife was from originally. She wanted to go home. So I said, yes, dear, and we moved to Santa Cruz. And I opened the shop. I had nothing to do during the day and playing at night 5 nights a week and stuff. So with my music, which I also started, playing clubs from San Jose up to San Francisco, back and forth. In those days, there was a lot of clubs to play. Now it's all DJs. But I digress, as Peter David would say. So the bottom line is that I opened the shop on a whim, had a partner, and had not really intended to open a shop when I moved here, but I had these 6,000 comics in my collection, and it gave me something to do with my days. And it was a kind of a sleepy little shop, and then that was November of '76, and then 6 months later, the good Lord laughed at me and gave us the first Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I had to open on time. People were actually waiting to get in. What's going on here? I want my cup of coffee and my crossword puzzle, So slowly but surely, as you know, as things progress, Star Wars opened the door for what we now know as the main thrust of pop culture. Without Star Wars, you wouldn't have Twilight, you wouldn't have Harry Potter, you wouldn't have had Lord of the Rings, you wouldn't have had any of pop culture right now. It opened the door. So 13 years in the original location, 89 earthquake kind of threw a monkey wrench in everything. And we were one of 45 businesses that moved into 8 of these big tent-like pavilions. The community came together on the parking lots behind the damaged buildings after the earthquake. They constructed these large canvas tents with aluminum ribs. Everybody pitched in and gave us a Christmas season. So the earthquake was in October, and we opened in the tents. Pardon me. Oddly enough, the day after Thanksgiving, which was the same day we opened originally in '76. So we had 45 businesses. We were told we'd be in the tent 6 months. We were the last of the 45 to come out of the tents, and it was exactly 3 years later.
Wow.
In '92, the day after Thanksgiving in '92, we moved into our current location. So we've been here now in town. The total, this is our 44th year in town. Luckily, I've been able to keep my singing going. I play Sunday nights at the good old haunt, the Cats in Los Gatos, good old roadside barbecue house. And then Friday night, play at the Shadowbrook in Capitol, a very nice upscale restaurant. And private gigs, parties, and private rest homes, retirement communities, things of that sort. So both of my passions are still keeping me going.
That's cool. I just had various questions, and I guess I'll just jump. We never have any real format on this show. It's just,
Speaking of that, what I've left out of this is my family. My wife Dottie and I have been married now 33 years this year, and we have 4 kids, 7 grandkids, and 6 great-grandkids.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot going on besides the business. My family, we have a lot of fun, a lot going on. So, just wanted to ask you about the earthquake. Out of all things that you said, I never knew it was 3 years. How did you do that? And was there a problem with theft or anything like that, with not having a very secure location? I never went to it during those years. So anyway, the old saying, "Takes a village." Well, the communities came together, and there's a lot of details. There's a few books on the subject with photographs and everything, but the basic essence of what happened was the business community. There was 3 organizations. There was the Chamber of Commerce, the Cultural Council, and the Downtown Association of Santa Cruz. And somebody knew that these tents existed. They came out of Canada. They got everybody pitched in. The union labor guys donated their time. There's a few pictures on our Atlantis website. And there's a couple of books, like I say, on the project. But basically, we started out with 8 big tents, and one of them housed Bookshop Santa Cruz, if you can believe it, and one of them housed Santa Cruz Hardware. And to the question about security, first alarm came in. They built cyclone fences around the parking lots. The first Christmas that we had, there was no heat, and you could actually see your breath in the air. But honestly, there were busloads of people who came to support the downtown. They wanted to make sure the merchants were going to make it. It was incredible. It was a real lesson in people coming together. You hear a lot about being part of the community and the average person, wanting to have a good life and a good home to live in and everything. Nothing like it. I'm sure this happened during Katrina. I'm sure this happened whenever there was a natural disaster, and you see people in the communities coming together to help each other out. And that's what it was. It was stressful times. There were aftershocks, and some people lost everything. Some people extended their credit to the point where, after the tents were coming down, as buildings were being rebuilt, some of them had used up all their credit and couldn't qualify to get into anything new. So I always say it was business as usual, but under a microscope, because if you think about your average town, you walk down the street and it's changed since you first walked down that street, and you don't notice it because it's usually done gradually. This was done all at once.
Right.
So if you took a snapshot of what Main Street looked like, 20 years ago, and you look at it now in any town, you're going to see changes. But it's the normal business, but when it's under a microscope, I clearly remember that the news stories in those days were another business in the tents was going out of business, was closing, and yet there were 3 or 4 businesses that started in those tents and went on to have great long lives here in town, but they never covered a new business opening. They always wanted to talk about the businesses that were closing, which was frustrating. But the bottom line was it was a community effort. It was a challenge as if you're in a tent with 4 other businesses or 6 other businesses and one of you has a problem, you all have the problem. And they finally installed some kind of a heater system, but it was in the center of the tent, so the people that were at the front where the doors were froze and the people in the middle were boiling, and people kept running over and adjusting the thermostats. I had to have a meeting for that, like, okay, how are we going to solve this problem, and, you'll learn to work with people. It's very tough when something like that happens. And then, pardon me, we moved out of the tents, as I say, the last person. They were taking the other tents down and storing the parts in our tent as that was happening. But the original store still lives on in the movies. We were in the Lost Boys movie.
Right, I was going to ask you about that.
A pretty special accident, because at the time, if you've ever been anywhere where you can observe a movie being made, you haven't got a clue, because you're watching the same scene shot over and over.
Right.
And it's out of context, and all I can say is when we watched the film being shot in our store, we kept thinking, what did we get ourselves into?
Now, how did that come about? I mean, did they come to you, or did you approach somebody else, or?
My partner at the time, Jim Oshbacher, unfortunately passed a year ago. Jim was married to Lisa Jensen, who is still the movie critic for the Good Times, the local entertainment paper here in town. And through her contacts, one of her friends is a woman who is a casting director. When they come to town in many of these towns, they need extras, they need site location, and the Visitors Council in Santa Cruz has a specific department to deal with Hollywood, the movies, and all of that. So when they came to town on looking for locations, they knew that one of the things they were going to need was a comic store, and if there wasn't one, they were going to have to build one. And so the combination of Lisa knew the woman who was the casting director locally on the job, and she said, "Oh yeah, we have a comic store." And what they loved about the store in those days, it was originally it was an old family grocery store, like a corner market.
Right.
So it had the long wooden floors and high ceilings, and it had a lot of room for them to dolly their cameras and all that. So that's why they loved the location. It was a minimum outlay for them. But one thing that I always love telling people is once they started shooting and they got everything ready, they had a guy whose job it was to go around and with a spray can of dirt, spray dirt and dust on everything, because the idea was that the parents were burned out hippies, and so the Lost Boys, their sons, were running, the 2 Frog Brothers were running the store, and of course two kids are not going to keep the place clean, so we had to clean the place 3 weekends in a row. store, and we had to clean the place all 3 weekends after the guy got done spraying dirt. But that's how we got involved with the thing. And of all things, I call it now the gift that keeps on giving. We had no idea it would be a cult classic.
Right.
So we just, this last December, received, there's a company that's authorized by Warner Brothers to do movie replications. And so we actually have now in the store for sale copies of the actual Vampires Everywhere movie prop. We've had it for 32 years. People have come from all over to see it and get their picture taken with it, but now we can actually sell them a copy of the replica. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Now, when they shot, was it, you said 3 weekends, was it all day, or was it just a few hours? Or
This is what the magic of the movies and why things cost. You would think that they would shoot the scenes. There's about 3 different times that there's scenes in the comic story movie.
Right.
Well, you'd think they would shoot what they need and go. Well, the way that their schedule was, the bonfire scenes on the beach at the boardwalk, they shot those at night, Monday through Friday. And they couldn't shoot there on Saturday because the boardwalk was open later, and by the time they got their setup, they'd lose the light. It wasn't practical. So they set up their shooting schedule so that they shot on the beach Monday through Friday. And on Friday, they had a second crew come and build the fake wall out in front of our store. We were on the street. Many people still come to town looking for the store on the boardwalk, and it never was on the But,
I guess I never thought of that because I knew where the real shop was, but yeah.
Exactly. But they put a fake wall along the gutter so that, it looked like it, and then they only shot from the lower part. So that, they built on Friday, they shot on Saturday, and then they tore that down on Sunday, and they did that 3 weekends in a row.
Wow.
Because they had to do, one day of shooting was totally lost. They I don't know why it didn't make it in the film. And the basic story was somebody was stealing, and Corey Feldman grabs a slingshot from behind the counter and blows the kid's earlobe off with the slingshot. So whether that effect didn't work or whether they thought it was too gruesome, a whole day's worth of shooting never made it into the movie. So, and I'm in the background in one scene where Corey Haim walks into the store after Grandpa says that's as close to town as I want to get, and he gets out of the car. The next scene shows Corey Haim walking in the store, and I'm in the background playing the pinball machine, and as an extra, you're not supposed to say anything. And I pretended the machine had screwed me, and I went, did you see that, in a very soft voice? And if you crank the volume to 8, you can hear me say my unauthorized line in an official movie.
I'll have to watch it again. I do have a copy of the film, yes.
Oh, boy, there you go. So, Lost Boys continues to bring in people, all over the world, not just all over the country.
Wow.
You name the country, Brazil, Argentina, New Zealand, Spain, Portugal, Italy, a lot of Germans, a lot of Australians. It's amazing the following this film. It really is. And we're redoing our website right now to help include a gallery of many of the photos we've taken with these folks when they come to the store. So.
Now, do they get disappointed when they find out you're not in the exact same location?
No, actually, they don't. They're just, one of the things they posted online, the Visitors Bureau here in town has posted a Lost Boys tour map. And you can, so a lot of these folks have gone online and they know ahead of time the points of interest. The one nice thing is we're the only place they can go to and actually talk to somebody about the film or even who was in the film. All the other places are just physical locations.
Right.
Including the boardwalk. They see the merry-go-round and all that kind of stuff. It's cool. But they come here and we can talk to them and show them some photos, tell them some stories, what was happening while the shooting was going on, that kind of stuff. So that's been a real godsend that we have something that makes us. We get calls from Yelp. Don't you want to improve your standing? And I go, you don't know who you're talking to, do you? It's, when people find us, we don't have to go troll for them. They troll for us.
Right.
It's kind of cool.
Now, another question to tag on the other question I had about the earthquake. When you moved into the present location, was it as it is now, or was it just kind of bare bones, and you had to paint all those features and create all those sets and everything that you have? The Star Trek set.
What we received when we signed the lease is what they call shell construction. The city was in the process while we were in the tent from building a parking structure, and they were going to have retail out front. prestigious building. And so the deal is that we were given what they call a shell construction, a concrete floor, 4 exterior walls, and a roof. And everything else that you see in here, including from putting the tiles on the floors, running the electric, I hired a contractor, we had to choose the colors, we had to choose, everything you see was our design. When we first moved in, we were only in our main room in 92. And then in 94, the room adjacent to us became available. So that's when we were able to move in there. And my first thought was to decorate it with a black ceiling and models of ships and stars hanging. So the idea was that it was outer space. But the heat loss, the energy efficiency was so great that they wouldn't let us do that. So because I had to go to a regular drop ceiling, I'm looking at this thing, I go, what's going on? And then all of a sudden it popped in my head that we were inside the ship instead of outside the ship. So we had some of our talented customers or artists, and the whole design on the back wall, it looks like we're on the engineering deck, was done with airbrushing. And Starlog sent us a production slide from Next Gen, and the company, there was a company in those days in Santa Clara that big computer, they dealt with a lot of big organizations like the NFL. And, when you see a beer delivery truck and it's got a guy skiing on the side of a mountain on it, this massive thing, and all that is a massive sticker that's been generated out of a computer and adhered to the surface of the truck. And we have a Enterprise outside a window in our top room and a picture of the Earth that was taken by one of the astronauts. And both of those are just massive stickers that were blown up on this computer and peeled off and stuck on the wall.
Wow.
And they're still there. I know, it's pretty cool. And when George Takei was here one day, and he looked at it and he goes, that's how we do it in the movies. We fold the camera with forced perspective, and if you take a picture of our wall, it looks like that stupid ship is hanging right out there. It really is amazing.
Yeah.
So a little creativity to add a little excitement to the place and a little fun. And then, back in I forget how many years it's been now, 10 years or longer, Bob Wilkins, who used to do creature features here in town, became a friend of ours over the years. And when he passed, his agent came to me, Tom, and he said, when Bob did his children's show for 3 years, Captain Cosmic, his sidekick was this robot called 2T2.
Right.
And 2T2 was actually built in 1965.
Wow.
High school robotics class, which I didn't know existed in 1965, somewhere in the Sacramento area. And Bob's cameraman, a guy named Chuck, owned 2T2 because he bought it from high school when the kids were done with it. And so Bob knew that Chuck had this thing, and he knew that because of Star Wars, robots were popular. So shortly after Star Wars opened, Bob called him and he said, I'm going to do this show and I want that robot on my show. So that's how 2T2 ended up as Captain Cosmic's sidekick.
Wow, I never knew.
Yeah.
I never knew that. I thought KTVU built it or something. It's just a prop.
In fact, Chuck told me that he bought 2T2 for $65 and negotiated with Channel 2 that for the 3 years that the robot was on the show, he got $65 a year as a licensing fee. So he tripled his money. And then when the show was over, it went back to him. And it stayed in his garage all those years. And then when Bob passed, his agent Tom came to me and said, this thing should be where people could enjoy it. And he said nobody in San Francisco wanted the robot.
Wow.
I know. I said, well, okay, we got a spot for him. So we had official, it's on our website too, the video where we officially changed his workstation from Starship, Captain Cosmic was on, to the USS Atlantis. And had the ceremony, the whole bit. It was a lot of fun. And Bob's son was here to take care of the installation and all that. It was really just a lot of fun. So now we're the home of 2T2. People come by and, and a lot of people don't realize realize this, but in those days, before cable, Ted Turner started something he called a superstation. And there were 4 stations that were nationwide, and one was out of Chicago, and one was out of, I'm trying to remember, but Channel 2 out of San Francisco was one of those stations.
Yeah, I knew that.
So when Bob was on every day at 5 o'clock, he went nationwide.
Yeah.
And we used to send him every week a little package with some of the new comics that came in that week, and he would hold it up and say, here are the comics that you can find in your local comic store courtesy of Atlantis Fantasy Pro.
I remember that, yeah.
People thought for years that he had a stake in the store, a piece of the action. He never did.
Did he ever visit the store?
We had him for our first anniversary, and then 29 years later, one of the last appearances he made was here at the store.
Very good.
It was, we have some photos of that too and everything. It was quite a day. If you can't have fun here, it's going to be a long day.
Right.
And any opportunity we have to do that. And all these things just kind of, I never set out to do any of this stuff. I never set out to say, I'm going to become a friend of Bob Wilkins, or I'm going to get to do this, or I'm going to do, you follow your nose and you go where it takes you. And it's just amazing the little things that come up along the way and the people you get to meet. It's a great business, and I've made some terrific friends. Great. Not only are they talented people, but they're just wonderful, wonderful people besides, so.
I like it that you take it to the next level. You could just have the robot there and that's the end of it, but you actually continue on with your weekly or, monthly newsletters, and you put a little secret code for 2T2.
That's true. Now, Captain Cosmic had a secret decoder card. When I was a kid, I had the decoder ring from Captain Midnight, just like Ralphie did in the Christmas Story, And Bob had a secret decoder card, and if you were a member of the club, you got the card and you could decode the secret message. Right. You could win a prize and all that stuff. Well, we replicated that decoder card, and we have a weekly email, and we send out a message from 2T2. And I always ask people, what do you think my first message was when I had to come up with a message for the first time? And go ahead.
Be sure to drink your Ovaltine.
Very good. It was drink Ovaltine.
Okay.
Very good. And, I had a guy call me and say, dude, I had to explain this to my kid.
I love that scene. And, my dad is of the age, and he goes, yep, that was the thing. He said the only difference, it wasn't Little Orphan Annie when he was a kid. It was Captain Midnight. But he did the exact same thing,
Yep. And I got just as pissed as Ralphie did.
Yeah.
When I saw the movie the first time, I went, what? Was somebody in the kitchen watching me while this happened? Because this is exactly what happened, Just incredible. But it makes for great stories, doesn't it?
Yes.
And some guys come in and they scream, is that the real 2T2? Yes, that's the real 2T2, So it's great because you can see in their eyes they're reliving their youth again.
Yeah.
And that's in this world of digital. This last December retail sales was up 3%, but online was up 18%. And we're all facing it. The current young person wants everything in their hand. They don't want to carry anything. They don't want to be bothered. But they want to be unencumbered, and their time is their most important asset. And with all of that, I still say, when you leave Disneyland, the next time you come back, it's going to cost you even more money. And you can't wait to come back. So what does that say? When people make up their mind that they're going to go do this, money isn't real to them. That whatever it takes, they're going to do it until they get home and see their credit card bill.
Right.
Yeah. But, we all need, and especially in this world today that we're living in, there's a lot to be concerned about the younger generation. Is there going to be a planet for them when they're raising their kids? And what the heck's going on with all this stuff, There's a lot of reasons for young people who facing massive loans or economic hardship or just, being worried about the economy of the planet, the whole thing. And they need a break from all of this stuff. The average person cannot afford to take a vacation every week or, go to Disneyland or Big Sur or however they choose to spend their downtime. But they really need a break. So if they can come into a comic shop just for whatever time time that they choose to spend here. You know, real time doesn't exist anymore. The real world is not existing anymore for whatever time they choose to spend with us. And that's the only way retail is going to survive. There's the onslaught of so many different things that are coming, but the experience, I mean, that's what got us through the earthquake. That's what gets people through other tragedies, floods, and look at these poor folks with these tornadoes now.
Yeah.
This one town that's been rebuilt 3 times.
Wow.
3 times.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? They want to be there.
Yes.
That's their community, you know? So those of us who don't understand look around and say, what is wrong with you people? Rebuilding in the same place. And I understand it totally. This is our identity, and we're not going to lose it.
Well, I didn't ask this earlier, but, you know, when the earthquake happened, did you consider at the time throwing in the towel and just saying, I'm done with this?
The earthquake hit at, I don't know, whatever, 5:00, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was like 5 o'clock.
And within 10 minutes of it happening, I mean, I was immediately in my car, drove home to check out my house, and when it was fine, I came back. Jim went to his house, checked everything out, and then we started cleaning up. And the next day, we were open for business, and somebody actually walked in and said, "Wow, it's nice to see something normal."
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I was in San Francisco at that time, so that's why I missed the tent, I missed all that stuff. I didn't go until you had the bigger new location, and so
our current the new store, which we now have been in for 28 years.
Yeah, but I think I avoided Santa Cruz because I knew there's a lot of damage down there. I mean,
and it was hard to get here.
Yeah,
the roads were. It was an amazing time that we got through it, you know, and because of the new store, that led to, up until then, I stayed close to home, close to the vest. I really didn't get involved in a lot, and I think it was 1978. Was the first time I went to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And then I didn't go again until 1995.
Oh, wow. I thought you just went every year. I didn't know that.
I know. Well, I didn't go until 95, but at that point we had done the new store, and we were nominated for the Eisner. And that's the year Joe Field won with Flying Colors. But when I got there, I turned around, somebody saw me, and he goes, "Joe Ferrara, what rock did you crawl out from under?" You know, I hadn't been, and I've been to, with the exception of one, I've been to the con every year ever since. And then slowly but surely got involved with different things. We won the Eisner the following year in '96, and then I was a judge in '98, and I was appalled at the lack of process for how it was being handled. And so I complained to some people I knew that I thought they could do a better job, and they said, "Well, write down your suggestions." So I did. And then I got a phone call, and they said, "Okay, you do it." So I volunteered myself, I guess. So for the last 18 years, I have not been a judge, but I have been the facilitator of the process by which retail stores receive their Eisner. And Will was still alive back in the early days of this, 92 and 93, when this all was starting, and they started the award. And over time, as Will and I were able to sit down and discuss, what he was looking for and what kind of things should we reward people for. And it's not necessarily the store that grosses the most money, that kind of thing. It's all the things we talked about, community, and are they being proactive about spreading the word to non-comic civilians, non-comic readers, and all that kind of stuff. So, and over the years, I'm the guy who sits in the room, and every year the panel of judges changes. So you can imagine, over 18 years, I've met some marvelous people from all areas, publishers, distributors, creators, and the recipients of this award then get to be a judge the following year. So as we become international, I've made friends with people in Tel Aviv and Australia and New Zealand. This last year was Buenos Aires. The year before it was Spain. It's amazing how many folks around the world have a passion for these comics, and the recognition that they're richly getting for all the hard work that they do from 9 to 5. One of my former customers, when he was a UC student, was a customer of mine, and then Eitan, he's moved up to Oakland, and 4 years ago, he opened a comic shop there called Cape and Cowl.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I've heard of it.
And he's done a very good job with it. And I saw him last year at the con, and I said, "So, Mr. Businessman, Entrepreneur, now that you've had your business for a while, what was your biggest surprise?" And he said to me, "Well, I didn't think I'd be working 15-hour days." And I said, "Well, son, you have a chance to make it. Because this is not a punch in and punch out kind of thing. When you own a shop, you're there. That's it."
Right.
You know?
Now, 45 years is a long time, obviously. How has it changed for you? I mean, we know how the industry has changed, but how has it changed for you, all these years?
Well, there's a couple of things I would say. The business itself, and then the creative aspect, the product that's coming out, it's exploded. The creative end of it. There's more diversity in comics than ever. The subject matter is not, it used to be superheroes, war, love, maybe some funny animals, that kind of stuff, But they've expanded the content so that a graphic novel is now accepted. I remember for years fighting with Rory, the fight with, people to get them to look at graphic novels as viable books, not just, stuff intended for kids and all that. Charles Brownstein's still fighting that fight with CBLDF and all that in some areas, where they ban things like Bone for crying out loud.
Right.
I mean, this is not that far from, I heard recently there's a football coach in Ohio that's suing the NFL for the halftime show that's going to make him go to hell.
Right.
And, and I'm thinking, well, but all you had to do was turn the channel.
Exactly.
It's not their fault that you're sitting there glued to your TV set. But so creatively, the product is very attractive to a wider audience, let's put it that way. And the business end of it, that's another whole conversation, how it's changed. But I have a great staff. I couldn't continue to do what I do without them. Tricia, my manager, operations, she's been with me for almost 14 years. And Nate, my inventory manager, has been with me 10 years. And Elena, our part-timer, has been here 3 years. And I have absolutely none stress when I'm not here.
Good.
I know they know what to do. B, they know how to treat people. C, they're not going to steal from me or they won't have a job. And they like living in Santa Cruz, So it really is stressless. And a lot of guys can't say that. A lot of guys can't go to the con because they don't have anybody they can trust their store with, and they can't afford to take that many days off, etc.
Right.
And retail's a challenge, but for me personally, it's nice to be able to say that I have this great staff. I couldn't do, and how and when will things change? I don't know. I know things will change.
Yeah.
So, you have to, and I just turned 70 this past year.
Oh, congratulations.
So, it wasn't, and I always tell people, if you had told me when I was 27 and started this job that I would be behind a counter for 44 years, I would have said, shoot me now. Because when you are 27, the last thing you want to do is limit yourself. You want every door open, every possible thing you can do.
Right.
And, at some point you realize you made some choices, and by making choices, you're the one closing other doors. I don't need to do that anymore. That's okay. As long as you're the one closing the door, you're fine. And somebody else tries to close the door, your first response is, you watch me kick that sucker down. I don't care. You're not going to tell me what to do,
Right.
It's been status quo for a while. I mean, we have challenges all the time. Financially, there were some down years. There's always a problem when you lose the turnover in employees. This is the longest staff I've had continuously.
Yeah.
So now they're at a point where Tricia's been here 13 years, and she's seeing the little ones grow up and high school, college, all this kind of stuff. I'm seeing the kids come in during the holidays with their families that were the same age as mom and dad were when they were first coming in, and guy goes, "Hey, do you recognize me?" I say, "Yeah, but the face belongs 3 feet above the ground, not 8 feet above the ground. Come on, So how it's changed is interesting business-wise. How the distribution, all that kind of stuff has changed. But for me personally, what stayed the same is the fact that people still love their comics, and they're still willing to come in for the experience here in the store, and we visit and have a great time with them and talk about anything under the sun, except, sometimes it's comics, but sometimes it's the movies. And, a lot of times it's the movies, so there you go.
Now, the first time I went in, this will tell you how old I am. I was 10, 1977, and now I'm 53. So it's like...
Well, there you go. One of our local heroes is James Durbin, the kid who was on American Idol.
Yeah.
He didn't win, but he had a great showing for himself, and he's a great musician. And he told me that when he was 10, and we had Bill Morrison, who at the time was working at Bongo for The Simpsons, that James came in and gave Bill a drawing of Bart Simpson that James had drawn, puking all over his family at the dinner table or something, And they literally published that in an issue of The Simpsons comics. And James says he has that in a safe deposit box.
Wow.
So who knew that this 10-year-old kid was going to be on American Idol? I mean, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And my next-door neighbor, literally, when he was in high school and his parents would go out of town and give a party at midnight, I'd pull my pants on and go out and say, Adam, take it in the house. People are trying to sleep. And it's Adam Scott, the actor who was on Parks and Rec, and he's in Dirty Little Lies. He's had quite a career doing a lot of different things. And he's gotten he had his own show on Fox and all that. But he played Amy Poehler's husband, Ben, in Parks and Rec. He's had a good career, and he's my next door neighbor. Everybody was somebody's next door neighbor.
Right.
Yeah. So it just happens to be, Adam was mine, but it's one of the joys of having longevity.
Yeah. Since you've been around a long time, you've had a lot of guests appear and stuff like that. I know I saw Willie Ito there and Scott Shaw. Can you tell me some of the different ones? Because I know I haven't been to all of them.
Well, the very first time we ever had a guest was we were still in the tents. Actually, no, I take it back. In the original store, we did have B. Joe Trimble, who started the fan letters that got Star Trek saved the first time around. We had her at the store. We had Bob Wilkins originally at the original store. We didn't do a lot of signings. Our very first one was Brent Anderson when he did the graphic novel God Loves Man Kills. So that'll tell you how long that book's been around.
Yeah.
We had a few of those. In the old days, it was harder to network and harder to find people. And then when we got to the new store, we were part of the Deathmate tour that Valiant and Image put together when they were doing that whole thing. That was when we still had only one side of the store. And I was working the night before feverishly trying to get everything going, and there were guys banging on the door out front, and I just, go away. I'm going, get out of here. And the next day, Joe Quesada said to me, that was me banging on your front door. How did I know he was going to end up at Marvel doing what he's doing? I wouldn't let Joe Quesada in my store. He still gives me a bad time about that. But we've had some marvelous people. Dick Ayers, who was a guest. We've had Lois Lane, Noel Neal, the original Lois Lane, was here a couple of times. Probably the most successful signing, it was really a last-minute thing. There was a small tour being organized by Marvel. Their rep at the time was a guy named Mike Martin, and he, one of the stores that was on the tour couldn't do it, so he asked me if we'd be willing to do it, and I said sure. And it was Fabian Nicieza who was writing X-Men at the time, and basically it was the wedding issue of Scott and Jean.
Oh yeah.
X-Men 30, and we knew Derek Robertson at the time. He was drawing Wolverine, and I had known him from when he was working for Diamond and Distribution. He wasn't even published yet. And look at him now, with the boys and everything. But in those days, so I said, sure. Well, somehow or other, we decided, this was before we had the second room. We were able to rent that room for one day, and we decided we'd have a wedding reception for Scott and Jean. My wife went to Costco and got a sheet cake, and, all of a sudden, she's at home at 12 o'clock watching the noon news, and we had done our press releases and stuff, and the lead story was that there was a wedding reception for the X-Men at Atlantis, and the first thing Dottie said was, oh my God, I didn't get enough cake. And she ran down we literally had people people lined up down the street, around the corner, down the block, and we normally closed at 7, and at 7 o'clock when we were supposed to close, Fabian got up from the table and he walked the line, and he signed for people in line outside all the way down the street.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. It was the most successful signing that we've ever had, you know. But that just shows you it was just incredible how that beat everything, including Death Suit Men, all that. We've had, you know, Neil Adams was here. We've had a lot of local. We have an open door policy on Wednesdays where if there's a creator who wants to promote their book, in fact, we have one coming up. I forget the exact date. One of the kids that used to come in with his twin has done his own book, and so he's going to come in and, you know, how cool is that to be able to sell your own comic in the store you grew up buying your comics in? Come on, you know? It's just really cool. And the list of people, you know, like you say, Scott Shaw, Sergio, we had the 3 Italian guys from the company that make the Geronimo Stilton comics. We've had Paige Braddock from the Snoopy Museum and the Schultz Company, and she's the creative director. She does all the hiring, firing, etc. And she's, you know, I don't want to leave anybody out. I've had so many, you know, wonderful. Stan Sakai recently was here to promote his relaunch of Usagi. I'm glad to see it's in color.
I think I was there for Floyd Norman. Wasn't he there? Yeah.
Oh, Floyd's become a dear friend. The first African American that Disney ever hired. He's a Disney legend. He's quite the guy now. He's been all over. He worked for years. He worked on the 3 Fairy Godmothers, Sleeping Beauty with no credits. His first credit wasn't until what was it? It was The Hunchback. Notre Dame was his first credit. And he, you know, Floyd was the one who worked originally on Jungle Book. It was his idea that the snake's eyes hypnotize you. That whole trust in me, that whole bit, that was Floyd's idea. Wow, cool. And that's when Walt moved him from animation to story.
Cool.
And he said, but I wanted to be an animator. Yeah. Floyd. And a lot of people don't know this. There's a documentary about his life, an animated life. It was on Netflix. I know it's on one of the services. I highly encourage anyone listening to this to search it out. Floyd Norman, An Animated Life. One of the most interesting aspects of Floyd's film career and life is that when the Watts riots broke out, Floyd had the presence of mind to say, you know, every reporter in LA is white and they're not going to get near that place. So he grabbed his camera, which there's an interesting story about the camera too, because it was the camera that Roy Disney sold to him that they used to shoot the True Life Adventures that we used to see, you know, Sundays. That was the Disney camera that he used to shoot the footage of the Watts riot.
Wow.
And any footage you see, historically, whatever, we wouldn't have any record without Floyd's presence of mind to get down there and shoot that film.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know. It's just astounding.
I didn't know all that.
It's you see, I didn't know any of this stuff either. And you meet people and you start finding out that they're more than just a pretty face or a guy with a pencil in his hand, you know?
Well, Floyd's so modest. I've met him a couple times, and he goes, "Oh shucks, yeah, I did that." You know, it's like you're a legend, dude.
Unassuming man. You would never know. He doesn't blow his own horn.
Yeah.
And most of these people are the same way. You know, Sergio, come on.
Yeah, same way. Yeah.
You know, every business has its jerks, and every business has its saints, and that's what I say. I'm fortunate. No, it's really fun when time after time when people come in to meet a creator and they come with me after. He's such a nice guy. It's such a nice. And I go, yeah, well, we know who the nice people are. That's why we only invite them. You know, we've had the Peonies here. We were one of the first stores that sold their original Fantasy Quarterly back when they first started, you know.
Oh, wow, that's before ElfQuest.
Yeah,
wow.
that's a ways back.
Jeez, forgot about that.
I know. I mean, and I hope none of my friends are listening that have signed here. Then I go, what about me? For crying out loud? Hero Bear, Mike Kunkel's Hero Bear. He did Shazam for a while with DC. He's got a new book coming out. We're going to have him as our guest on Free Comic Book Day. And, Yeah, I saw his first sketches for Hero Barrow, so the first person he showed them to.
Well, you have a lot of them listed on the website, right? So it's like, if people have been on the store.
And that's what we're going to go back and do, too, is kind of revisit that and say, who do we forget? Who do we leave out?
Yeah.
We don't want to, they don't want to, affront anyone, but it's just a joy to let people come in. We had Jeremy Bullock and Kenny Baker when they were doing their tour for the Men Behind the Mask.
Oh, wow.
And R2. Yeah, they went to some stores in the Bay Area. They came here, and just wonderful guys, although trying to understand Kenny Baker was impossible. His accent was so heavy. I mean, Jeremy had to translate for him.
Translate his English into English, please.
Into English, please. Well, they were here during the World Soccer, and all they wanted to do was go across the street to the pub and watch the game.
Yeah.
Like two normal guys. Yeah. Very, very special. Very special.
Let me switch a little bit because I mentioned the music career, and I wanted to talk a bit about that. Was that in your original plans before the comic store? Because you did a couple albums. I don't know how well they did or if they did anything. Then, a long time, and then you did another album much more recently. But what came about on those, and what was the genesis of all that?
Well, I started playing in clubs when I was 19. I mean, in high school, I had a rock band and a folk group and all that stuff, And then when I hit college, I met a guy who was 4 years older than me, Dennis, and he had been through the circuit in L.A. and around, and I'll never forget this. My freshman year of college, it was finals week, my freshman year of college in 1968, and he said, I got us a job. I said, doing what? He said, playing music. I said, what? I had never been in a bar. I was 19, and so our first job together was in Los Gatos at a place that's now a sports bar called Double D's.
Oh, yeah.
It was called the Grog and Sirloin. Mm-hmm. And we played 4 hours. In those days, it was standard, 9 to 1. It didn't matter what day of the week it was. Tuesday, Sunday, Friday. It was 9 to 1 because the bars closed at 2, right? And we got the amazing sum of $15 each for the 4 hours that we played. And I thought that was pretty good, And over time, we started, that was my second extended family. My comic people are my third extended family. But my first extended family, I have my regular family, and then my first extended family was my music family. Mm-hmm. And I got to know a lot of people. And one of the groups that was playing, I was playing in Campbell at a place called the Garret, and I was headlining downstairs.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And there was a trio upstairs. It was Juice Newton, before she became Juice Newton.
Yeah.
And we would always sit and talk after a gig, have something to eat. And I remember her saying to me one night, Joe, I'm going to go to L.A. and I'm going to be a star. You ought to come with us. And I looked at her and I said, Juice, I don't want the lifestyle. And 10 years later, it took her 10 years before she sang Angel of the Morning. She went through 3 albums, etc. But it was her last shot. They told her that if this one didn't go, they were going to drop her. And of course, it went. And then Angel of the Morning, Queen of Hearts, all that kind of stuff, And she was playing Tahoe, and I went up there with some friends, all of us musicians from the area, to see her. And after they finished the gig, we were again sitting in the bar, pretty similar situation. And this was like 3 a.m. or something, and this was in February, and it was Wednesday night, and she had been Sunday night at the Santa Rosa County Fair. She had been Monday night at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz. Tuesday they were on the road. Wednesday night they were in Tahoe, and they were doing this was February, and they were doing it until October. And I said, boy, did I make the right choice. It did not sound good to me at all. Some people like Willie knows those people, they love being on the road. But my choice had always been, I got my degree in music from San Jose State. And I really learned to be a musician there. I played naturally all my life, but I never studied the discipline. And then I really wanted to learn, so that's what I majored in at State, voice and everything. I learned how to use my voice so I didn't stretch it or ruin it like a lot of my contemporaries did, screeching a lot of that stuff. That's why I still have a voice these days. Cool. But I also became a musician. And then, the plan was to maybe teach at some point. I knew I didn't want to be on the road making a career out of that. It wasn't that I doubted my abilities. It was just that I didn't really see myself doing what that kind of a life required. It's very rare that you can, avoid all that other stuff that goes with it. So I did an album in '75. It wasn't received well. I got an audience at Capitol Records, and it just wasn't what they were looking for. And the guy said to me, "But I turned down Jim Croce, so what do I know?" He said. So then in town, I wanted to do some other things. I made a second album, which was a lot more successful, and then made a tape, and then I've made a couple of. I made 3 CDs over the time.
Oh, okay.
And I just sell those at my gigs. I've got 2 of them now for sale. And my voice changed. I used to be a tenor, and my voice came down, and now I'm a baritone, as you can tell. The voice. And so, I'm very comfortable. My jobs don't take me more than about 20 miles away from home, unless, weekly on my regular gigs. But I love the music, and I love being able to connect with people in much the same ways I do in the store. All the things we said about the store apply. People go to a bar. Come on, you can buy cheaper food and cheaper booze and eat it at home. Why are you going out? There's a whole sociological dynamic there. And when people come into the club, it's not a concert. It's not like they're going to sit there and rapt attention. Sometimes they come in with friends that they haven't seen in years, and they go, "Oh, let's go listen to some music with Joe and have some fun." And last night was one of those nights where I had people who came, they were ready to sing. You weren't going to stop them. And they sang everything under the sun that you can imagine. My Girl and Ring of Fire, and oh my gosh, when they're gonna get on the train, you're not gonna pull that cord and stop them. They're gonna go without you, So it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that I made this choice. It's kept me close with my family and my friends, and it allowed me, if I had done more with the music, we wouldn't have been talking about Floyd Norman, or the Peonies, or any of these other people.
Right. Now, do you have a fixed set every night, or do you just kind of play with the feel, or a little of both?
That's a great question. It really is, because I used to set ahead of time. I used to say years ago, I'd say, okay, man, tonight I really feel like singing love songs, and inevitably that's when everybody wanted to sing Brown Eyed Girl and Sweet Caroline, and just the opposite. If I was ready to really cut loose, and that would be a night people wanted to sit there and listen. So I learned that the only thing I was doing was setting myself up for disappointment, because there was only one successful outcome possible under that scenario. And now what I've done is I've expanded the number of songs. I'm constantly adding songs, either new ones or old ones, and I now know over 1,400 songs
that I
can play at any time. So that covers a lot of bases.
Yeah.
And I never decide. What I will do is I will have ready to go 2 songs. It's like 49ers script their first 20 plays or whatever, and something might throw that in the barrel, so you have to, wing it. I will go in and have a couple of songs in mind to start with, and quite often what happens is I'll visit with some people who I see in the audience, and they'll say, "Oh, this is my sister from Denver," or last night, people that came from Sacramento, and they love early Beatles, or they love this or that, and boom, right away I say, "Okay, well, you gave me my opening number." So it does 2 things. It really gives them validity. Oh, I'm doing something special for them because I'm going to play their song first, and all that kind of stuff, And then it gets me off and running connected to my audience, because any guy can sit there and play. But, when you connect to the audience, that's when you really become an entertainer, a performer, and that's basically what happens. So, yeah, I don't plan more than 2 songs, and sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I never get to those 2 songs. It's really funny. And I'll work in the afternoon. I go set up early on a Friday, say, and tomorrow, I'll take some time and spend a half an hour to an hour, and I'll go through my list of 1,400 and say, is there anything here that I haven't played in a long time? Let's find a song that I haven't played in a while. And I'll make up a list of 15 or 20 songs that I haven't played in a while. And I might get to 2 or 3 of those on average, because the crowd want to go. So it's kind of fun.
Now, do you have different instruments, or you just have the basic acoustic guitar? What do you generally play?
I have an electric acoustic guitar, 6-string guitar,
Okay.
and I don't use looping. I don't use electronics. I'm a throwback. It's just me and my guitar, and I will play a variety of styles, and I will play. Sometimes I'll pick. Sometimes last night, one of the fun songs we sang was the Kinks' Lola. And, let me just ask you, Mark, if you've been drinking for 2 hours, is there any way you're not going to sing a Lola?
Yeah, I'll sing it now.
Lola, right? On key, off key, it doesn't matter. You throw your head back and you scream Lola, right?
Except I'll probably sing Yoda, but that's just me.
Yeah, exactly. And you make me feel like a natural woman. Even the guys were singing that.
Yeah.
So
when you're drunk, yes, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a Pandora's box, really it is, and that's the great thing about having. I don't like to do too much to slow that train down, because once everybody's on board, I don't take a break. I play my gigs straight through without taking a break. Yeah. And people ask me, I go, well, why should I take a break? Number one, what am I going to do? Talk to people? Heck, I'm doing that from the stage in between. And when I stop, it snaps the string. All of a sudden, people are back to reality. It's like when you walk out of Disneyland. All of a sudden, there's the bed. Okay. But if I stop and take a break, how many times have you seen somebody say, we're going to take 10 and we'll be right back, and then 10's a half an hour, for crying out loud.
Right.
And by the time they come back, it's empty chairs, and all the energy that you built up and the connection with the audience is gone.
Right. No more momentum or anything. Yeah.
No momentum at all. It's we've seen momentum in sports. It's the same thing in the club. Last night I started real quiet, and hour and a half later, the train had left the station.
Yeah.
And people were on board, and we were having a good time. And the time went by. And the other thing too, the staff that works there. You've got everybody who's working the restaurant, and their night goes faster when people are having a good time and people are in a good mood and they tip better, etc., and all that. Nothing worse than having somebody who is doing the same songs and the same set and the same routine. You can set your clock by what song the guy's playing, and they go to the manager and go, look, dude, you got to do something about this guy. You don't last very long if the crew is not on your side.
Right.
So you're not just entertaining the audience.
Yeah. I think you're safe with 1,400 songs. I don't think you have a repeat verse.
Yeah, it's every once in a while I find one and I go, oh my God, how come I was driving about 6 months ago. I was driving and I heard Billy Joel's "She's Always a Woman," and I thought to myself, holy cow, how come I haven't learned this song? And I literally went home. I'm sitting in the office working on it. My wife walks in and goes, don't you know that song? And I said, well, not yet. And she said, well, get busy, for crying out loud.
How long does it take, speaking of that, how long does it take you to learn a song typically?
It depends. If it's a song from my past that I know the melody, all I have to do is find out what key it's in and get the words. I have a Surface Pro tablet now, so that I'm not hindered by having to memorize the lyrics. If it's something that I've known in the past, I'm actually driving today over at 1 o'clock to a 100th birthday, and I'm singing the old Tony Bennett hit "Because of You." And I never had learned it, but I heard the song a million times. Right. So it was really a quick learn for me. Other songs that are more complicated, more chords, more key changes, stuff like that, it'll take me literally anywhere from 10 minutes to 3 months. Once when I was working out Come Fly With Me, not Come Fly With Me. What was it? It was on the Sinatra
Fly Me to the Moon or something?
No, it was Come Fly With Me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was Come Fly With Me. And I had been working on it for weeks, and my wife yelled in the other room, I'll sure be glad when you learn that damn thing. Like Let's Fall in Love or something with a jazz, like Moonlight Serenade, something like that. But standard rock stuff and everything, it'll take me 10 minutes to a couple of weeks if it's more complicated too. Thing like that.
Do you tend to do any of your originals anymore? I know you wrote a few on the
I've got about 20 songs. I always tell the audience I'll do us both a favor and I won't sing anything I wrote before I turn 21. all of that's kind of paying my dues, getting me here, It takes a certain kind of a night.
Yeah.
I always end my set with an original. There are times it's kind of like my signature song.
Yeah.
And that was the first song that literally I said to myself, okay, now everything has to be at this level. I realized at that point I was able to be self-disciplined enough to, not every word that came out of my brain was a jewel. You have to get to the point where you can cut and paste, and you can figure out, you can be self-disciplined enough to recognize when it's good and when it's not. And all songwriters have to be in the process of going through stuff to get to the good stuff. And so I will pick and choose. Once in a while, somebody will ask for an original. I don't consider myself necessarily a songwriter as much as an interpreter. I've got 20, 25 songs that I'll mix in here and there. But the real joy for me is when somebody says to me, I like how you took that song and made it your own. Or that's the first time I've actually listened to the words to that song. I recently learned Lady Gaga's Million Reasons. and I do it more kind of a folky baritone thing, and I slow it down a little and let people listen to the lyric. And it's still a solid song. I really like the song. But I've had people tell me, oh, you got to learn this with your voice and this and that and everything, And I love it when people suggest, hey, you got to learn that song or this song because you do a really good job with that.
I'm sure there's stuff you haven't heard and stuff, even now.
Absolutely. No, they're always telling me about stuff I haven't heard and stuff. But, I learned Bruno Mars. I've learned some newer stuff, too.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
This is the, what's her name? Ingrid Michaelson and Nora Jones and stuff. You have to be able to, generally speaking, in the restaurant, the older crowd comes in earlier, and then from 9 to 10, it's usually the younger crowd. So, I've learned some Ed Sheeran and, some Pink, and I even do Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time. It's a great song. And one guy said, that's the first time I've heard a man sing that song. I hear all these things, different people find different ways to say feedback, things like that, It's very special. It really is. And none of that, when you're standing on stage in an auditorium, you don't get that kind of feedback. You get Twitter, you get social media, people telling you that kind of stuff. But, there's no substitute for that one-on-one connection.
And typically the Cats and Shadowbrook are the mainstays for you still?
They still are, yeah. I at this point, I never really thought years ago I made the decision that I wasn't really going to try to, be a star or anything like that. But right now, I'm fortunate enough that there's still a couple of places that will feature a regular performer. Most of the clubs, the restaurants or bars that have bands and stuff, they rotate them, and they're attracting a lot of dance folks because they have the drinkers and all that. So the old coffee house model and the old sit down and listen to some good music model, it's disappearing pretty much. You can still find locations here and there. But I'm very happy with this because, again, it's not taxing. I'm able to, they pay me, they feed me, and I'm at home in bed before midnight. So how many gigs can you say that about,
There you go. Perfect. All right. Well, I think we've covered pretty much everything about your two careers, as it were. I guess the best thing to say is, is there anything you'd like to plug, or website, or how people get in touch with you?
Well, we're currently redesigning our website. That should be ready to go fairly soon. It's a pretty old 80s style website right now. My email is very easy. It's joe@atlantisfantasyworld.com. And always welcome people who... there is one other thing that I do want to talk about, even just briefly. Because you don't think about this when you're younger and all that, but at 55 I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And as a typical baby boomer of my generation, I knew absolutely nothing. And we all know that women are very proactive about seeing a doctor and about taking care of their own health. And my standard go-to here is, show me a 55-year-old woman who does not know what a mammogram is. Impossible, right? Show me a 55-year-old man who knows what a PSA test is. Almost impossible. that's the test men use to check for prostate cancer. It's a blood test.
Mm-hmm.
But I won't drag on this, but I am 15 years past the successful prostate cancer surgery, and I've been very active in raising awareness because I realized there was a disconnect when you see so many women talking about it and men knew nothing, and I said, this is wrong. And, quite a few of my customers now over the years, over the last 15 years, have come to me and said, guess what, I've got it too. And they come to me because they know I know the right questions to ask. I'm part of the support group locally. I get them involved with that. So I guess what I really want to say is to just tell men, I don't care how old you are, your health is your responsibility. Yeah. And you need to know what you need. Most men don't know what they need to know in regards to the general health. And if you're talking about something going wrong with little Johnny, they don't want to talk about it at all.
Right.
You know? So it's something that more men need to be proactive about. I am not only have I beat that, I beat 2 other cancers. I had a tongue cancer and an eye cancer. So,
oh wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. Well, it's just things happen, and luckily my wife has beat breast cancer. I mean, we're all on this journey, and we're all going to have to deal with something at some point. If we're lucky, we avoid it. But,
right.
The whole thing is, again, to just have men be proactive about learning what you need to know.
Right.
It's appalling the lack of information that men have about taking care of their own health.
And so, I try to do as best I can, especially as I get older now. Doesn't seem like I'm older now, but, it's like, hey.
Yeah. I mean, when I say I'm 70, what did I sing last night? I sang your song, Elton John's Your Song. And everybody was smiling, and they were singing of it. And I said, when I got done, I said, do you know that song is 50 years old? and they stared at me. I said, 1970, that song is 50 years old. And they just went, where did those 50 years go?
Exactly.
Unreal. So, there's all kinds of ways that men can get informed. And if they want to know anything, they can always talk to me. And women, too. We try to get women educated because they'll educate their men, that whole thing. What do you need to know and to be considered to be proactive about taking care of your own health? So,
very good.
There you go.
All right. Any last words of wisdom, or just want to sign off at this point?
I just say, the old adage, do what you enjoy. You never work a day in your life, all that stuff. Take care of people, and they'll take care of you. Anybody who's in this business or who's part of comics or anything, celebrate the joy we have of being creative. Life is a process. It's not about the result. It's not gaining things or acquiring things. It's about doing things.
Yeah.
And the saddest people I know are the people who don't do anything, who don't have a passion.
I had to learn that, but I learned it well.
Yeah. So I always, when I meet someone, I never ask them what they do. I always ask, what's your passion?
Yeah.
And some of them are startled.
Yeah.
I've never been asked that before. And some of them have an answer right away, and some stand there and stare at me, and it's obvious that they don't have a passion.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's it's been a lot of fun, man. I enjoyed talking with you.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe, for being a guest on this podcast.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk again soon. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Joe Ferrara, for being my special guest. Episode number 66 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Popping prescription pills in the pink electric church. The final flicker of your